What's good? Salutations to the nations. Angel Knots, it's your boy Young Sinai.
Angel Knot.
All right, here we go. Well, before we get started, we're gonna go ahead and get things started with a prayer. All right. Father God, thank you for today. Thank you for anybody that tunes in, Lord. Just ask that you bless them and their families, watch over them, protect them, let them come to know you. If they don't, if they do, let them get even closer to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Angel Knot.
All right, so this video is the Sega Genesis got destroyed in Japan. Okay. This is by Lady Decade. Okay. I know I got some Sega fans. Y'all been sounding off in the comments. Let's go ahead and see what she talking about. Let's see if she got her facts together. And y'all correct her if she don't. Let's check it out.
Who doesn't love this classic Sega platform? Well, the Japanese, obviously. When it comes to iconic game consoles that's made a cultural impact, a few can hold a candle to this Sega Genesis. Being pretty much just about as legendary a system it can be by this point, this 16-bit marvel wasn't just a hit. It was at the epicenter of a gaming revolution. Taking the United States by storm, this console, celebrated as the Mega Drive around most of the world, would function as the catalyst that ignited one of the most memorable console wars in history. In fact, it didn't just do well, it triumphed and dominated in so many places, including large chunks of Europe, Australia, and Brazil. In all of these places, it even outsold its formidable rival, the Super Nintendo. Much like the British Empire at its peak, this Sega conquest spanned continents, with the Mega Drive establishing dominance in multiple territories. Remarkably, even in North America, where the Nintendo Entertainment System once reigned supreme, its dominance would eventually come to an end at the hands of the Sega Genesis. However, despite these triumphs, a critical setback in one of the most pivotal markets cast a long shadow over the Mega Drive's ambitions of becoming one of the world's best-selling consoles. That setback? Its failure to conquer its home turf in Japan, a region that was, without question, the beating heart of the console gaming industry at the time. This raises the intriguing question: why? So, with all that in mind, let's jump headfirst into the fascinating world of consumer behavior to uncover why the Sega Mega Drive stumbled in its own backyard. How did a console that achieved legendary status abroad fail to leave a lasting impression at home? I am Lady Decade, and this is why the Sega Mega Drive got destroyed in Japan.
Dang,
The Sega Mega Drive was pure 90s.
Dang, she put some emphasis on destroyed. I hope she come with some receipts.
Magic, bringing arcade quality gaming home with style. From Sonic the Hedgehog's blazing speeds to the gritty action of Streets of Rage, its 16-bit power delivered unforgettable worlds, vivid graphics, and soundtracks that still echo today. It wasn't just a console, it was a defining symbol of a generation's love for gaming. The system's library certainly brought with it a certain kind of charm and attitude, with gameplay in the system's key titles differing wildly from the popular AAA titles of today. Fortunately, while times have moved on, great titles inspired by this amazing period in history continue to be pumped out. And what's even better is that I know how you can play them for next to nothing. Get 66% off Streets of Rage 4, 77% for a final fat down memory lane. I first need to bring you back to the 29th of October, 1988, a date forever etched in gaming history as the day the Sega Mega Drive first hit Japan's shores. This was no ordinary system, as the cutting-edge console was powered by technology drawn from not only Sega's brilliant System 16 arcade board, but also anchored by the mighty Motorola 68000 processor.
I didn't know Motorola had anything to do with Sega.
You could easily make a case that in all technicalities, it made Nintendo's Famicom look like a baby's toy in comparison. So, what could go wrong, right? Well, as the curtains rose on its launch, the Mega Drive quickly established itself as the most technically advanced gaming console on the market, boasting unmatched power and sophistication. After all, It marked a quantum leap from Sega's previous
Hey, Sonic was
console.
getting it. Hold up, run it back.
A quantum leap of matched power and sophistication. After all, it marked a quantum leap from Sega's previous
Hey,
8-bit
Sonic.
consoles, which had failed to secure a significant market share in Japan or anywhere else, really, by that point, for that matter.
Did y'all have a Sega Master System? We always, talk about Sega Genesis, but who had a Sega Master System? I had a Sega Master System. When I say I mean my dad. Okay. I was a kid. I didn't have a job. I was a kid. Okay. But I remember having a Sega Master System, and I remember me and my mom playing it while my dad was at work, and we broke it. I don't know how we broke it, but we broke it.
This a crucial moment. Nintendo was clearly the undisputed champion of the Japanese gaming market. The ubiquitous Famicom platform, a system later rebranded as the NES of most parts of the world, was a household favorite that many gamers.
Do y'all like the look of the Famicom more or the NES? I like the NES. I think it looked way cleaner, but I mean, I know I do have a bias being from here and it's just a nostalgia, but it just looked cleaner.
Loved and cherished. In fact, Nintendo's dominance, especially in North America, was a formidable force that posed a significant challenge for Sega, so the company was faced with a tall task when positioning its new 16-bit platform right from the beginning. But the Genesis ultimately ended up doing great in America, so why not at home? One of the most intriguing chapters in the Mega Drive story lies in its Japanese launch, which played out quite differently compared to its introduction in other parts of the world. While the Mega Drive would eventually grow to boast over 900 titles by the end of its life cycle, its early days in Japan were characterized by a sparse lineup that made it difficult to lure gamers away from the well-established Famicom favorites. In fact, the Mega Drive's launch in Japan stumbled right out of the gate. As of day one, the console arrived with just 2 titles, Space Harrier 2 and Super Thunderblade.
And
These games
those low-key kind of look like the same type of game.
showcase the system's impressive 16-bit capabilities. They were far from enough to spark widespread enthusiasm, especially in a market accustomed to the Famicom's seemingly endless catalogue of hits. Things didn't change quickly either. By the time the first Christmas rolled around, the situation had only marginally improved with Altered Beast and the niche Osamatsu-kun added to the lineup. Sega's failure to secure a broader array of launch titles left early adopters feeling underwhelmed, providing little reason for potential consumers to want to jump on board either. Worse still, the following 6 months were marked by an agonizing drought of new releases. For a console that needed to make a strong impression in a fiercely competitive market, the lack of fresh content was a critical blow, to say the least. This sluggish start made it nearly impossible for the Mega Drive to gain traction at home, as gamers had little incentive to invest in a new system when its library couldn't match the breadth and variety offered by Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, if you already have Nintendo and it's already has, you know, 7,000 games, what is the point of picking this up? I can see what they're.
Despite its sleek design and futuristic 16-bit hardware, it was difficult to drum up excitement for a console with such a limited game library, especially in an era when a strong launch lineup could make or break a system's appeal. By the 1st of January 1990, an astonishing 15 months after its Japanese launch, the Mega Drive had a meager library of just 26 games.
Wow.
This glaring lack of software support had a profound impact on its performance, as reflected in the sales figures. By the end of 1990, Sega had managed to sell approximately 1 million Mega Drive units in Japan, which, although sounding like quite a lot, was a dismal number when compared to the Famicom, which had already surpassed a...
So I wonder if, Japanese parents got the Genesis for their kids or the Mega Drive for their kids. I'm like, what is this crap? I said get a Nintendo, not a Sega.
staggering 20 million units sold. The cold hard truth was that the console wasn't even in second place, as even NEC's PC Engine,
Oh, wow.
Sega's lesser-known competitor, managed to outsell the Mega Drive during this period, putting Sega down in third place. But what made matters even worse was the extreme lack of third parties who were developing games for the system. Compounding the issue, Nintendo, ever the fierce competitor, had
I was about to say Nintendo got the game on lock. They got all. They're probably betting like, or they're probably saying in their minds like, do we want to place this bet and go with this lesser known obscure console, or do we just want to develop for Nintendo? So they just playing, doing the safe bet.
been locking down developers with aggressive exclusivity deals. These contracts effectively barred some of the most talented studios from working on Mega Drive titles.
Oh, y'all were telling me about that in the comments. Y'all were letting me know. Y'all was putting me up on game. Okay.
Leaving Sega with a shallow pool of partners to rely on.
For the other Sega reaction video, y'all gotta check that out.
Consequences of this early misstep were profound. Without a robust library to attract players, the Mega Drive struggled to establish itself. This lack of third-party support didn't just slow down the console's growth, it cast a long shadow over its trajectory, making it nearly impossible for Sega to close the gap with its rivals. In a market where software truly was king, the Mega Drive was left to fight an uphill battle, one that would define its fortunes for years to come. It appeared Nintendo had an ironclad grip on Japan. The titans of Japanese game development, Capcom, Konami, Square, and Enix, were firmly loyal to Nintendo, leaving the Mega Drive in a much weaker position. What made this even worse is that, unfortunately, Sega's internal strategies did little to help their cause. While Nintendo excelled at fostering close relationships with developers and maintaining tight control over its software ecosystem, Sega's approach was plagued by inconsistent messaging and lukewarm support for external studios. This lack of cohesion left third-party developers who were interested in working with Sega hesitant to commit to the Mega Drive, further widening the gap between Sega and its dominant rival. In relation to this chapter of history, former Sega of America CEO Tom Kalinske later admitted that Sega failed to apply the bold and aggressive strategies in Japan that would later be proven to be wildly successful in the US and Europe. While markets abroad were treated to bold marketing campaigns like the iconic Genesis does,
What's
Nintendo in the US or in the UK, the memorable slogan,
Man, if they said that in Japan and came out with that lackluster library, they would get laughed out of the country.
"To be this good takes ages. To be this good takes Sega."
Oh, that's
Sega's
hard.
approach
I've never
to
seen that one.
Japan was far more subdued. Competitive advertising in the region was considered impolite, forcing Sega to tread carefully with its messaging. While Sega's Western branches were taking bold jabs at Nintendo, Sega Japan came across as far too restrained, more pat a cake than proper fight. Unsurprisingly, this softer approach failed to connect with consumers, leaving Sega struggling to gain traction. Adding to the challenge, Nintendo's aggressive exclusivity deals locked down the major developers into its ecosystem, cutting the Mega Drive off from high-profile titles. It felt as though Sega showed up to a battle of wits, completely unarmed, while Nintendo arrived with an entire arsenal at its disposal. No matter the reason, Sega's subdued approach generated little interest. This timid strategy effectively left the door wide open for Nintendo to dominate unchallenged. Sega's failure to adopt a similarly bold and aggressive playbook in its home market not only stalled its momentum, but also gave the impression that it wasn't even serious about competing. As a
Wow.
result, Sega found itself trapped in a frustrating predicament, unable to secure the support of the industry's biggest developers, partners who could have propelled the Mega Drive to new heights. With Nintendo firmly monopolizing the most influential studios and Sega failing to present a compelling case for its platform, the Mega Drive's quest for relevance in Japan often felt like an uphill battle with one hand tied behind its back. If Sega weren't going to shout from the rooftops that they were better than Nintendo, then who else is going to bother to do so? Not the Japanese, obviously. Due to the platform's successes overseas, the Mega Drive, as you know, would ultimately end up with a huge library and a fair amount of support from third parties. So, while Konami and Capcom eventually began developing for the Mega Drive, their arrival felt like locking the barn door after the horse had bolted. By the time these legendary developers turned their attention to Sega's console, Japanese gamers had already sworn they were.
So what was the exclusivity deal? I guess I mean it had to have just been for a period of time, so they couldn't just keep it on lock.
Allegiance to the Super Nintendo. Sega's belated efforts to court these heavyweights came across as too little, too late, and the impact on the Mega Drive's reputation was difficult to reverse. Worsening the situation with Konami and Capcom, Nintendo's exclusivity agreements ensured that major franchises such as Street Fighter II and Turtles in Time were locked to the Super Famicom for a full year
Wow.
after release. When the embargo finally lifted, Sega seized the opportunity to bring Street Fighter II Champion Edition to the Mega Drive, but Nintendo wasted no time firing back. Almost immediately, they released the Street Fighter II Turbo for the Super Nintendo, which not only boasted faster gameplay, but reinforced Nintendo's position as the home for premier third-party titles. This tit-for-tat exchange highlighted Sega's constant struggle to play catch-up, as even their most significant victories were quickly overshadowed by Nintendo's countermeasures. The delay in securing key developers and franchises hurt Sega's ability to establish the Mega Drive as a must-have console in Japan. Gamers who had grown accustomed to experiencing the latest and greatest games on Nintendo systems saw little reason to jump ship, leaving Sega to fight a losing battle in its own backyard. The Mega Drive's library, while eventually impressive, lacked the early momentum needed to sway a fiercely loyal audience, and by the time Sega began to close the gap, the damage had already been done. What a disaster. But sadly for Sega, there were even more reasons that the Japanese stuck with Nintendo. In Japan, the Famicom and Super Famicom were synonymous with the golden age of JRPGs, a genre that captured the imagination of an entire generation.
I mean, yeah, they got Chrono Trigger, they got Final Fantasy, they got Earthbound. Is that considered a JRPG? I mean, I know it was made in Japan, but it's America, right? Like it's taking place in America. It's still a JRPG. But yeah, they had that on lock.
Titles like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy became a cultural phenomena, selling millions of copies and influencing everything from anime to merchandise. These games weren't just popular, they were defining aspects of Japanese gaming culture.
Sorry, y'all, I'm warming up some coffee, you know what I'm saying?
Dragon Quest III's release in 1988, causing such a stir that it reportedly led to school absences and prompted new laws around weekday game launches.
Wow.
The Super Nintendo only amplified this legacy, becoming the home for classics like Chrono Trigger,
Yep.
Secret of Mana, and Earthbound.
Yep. Okay.
All of which
So they're including Earthbound.
pushed the boundaries of storytelling, music, and visuals. JRPGs on these systems offered epic tales, complex characters, and vast worlds to explore, creating experiences that felt as immersive as they were emotional. Square and Enix never published titles for the Mega Drive, ensuring that cultural juggernauts like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy remained exclusive to Nintendo. At the time, Mega Drive owners who were fans of the genre had to settle for Phantasy Star, though, judging by the system's sales figures in Japan, it seems not many chose to make such a compromise.
Hey, that's Happy Console Gamer's favorite game though.
But the Mega Drive's lack of success wasn't just about the games, as even their graphics, although better than the Famicom's, wasn't that much better than the rest of the competition. When discussing the legendary 16-bit battle between Sega and Nintendo, one key player is often left out of the story. NEC and their PC Engine, the very system that beat the Mega Drive at home.
Yeah, I've never played PC Engine. Have y'all played PC Engine? Let me know. Am I sleeping? Am I missing out? If I am going to play a PC Engine game like on a ROM, what is the game you will recommend? Like, you you will recommend Sonic with Sega, Mario. What's the game you're going to recommend for PC Engine?
which I briefly mentioned earlier. While the Mega Drive and Super Famicom dominated the narrative of the console wars, the PC Engine quietly carved out its own legacy as a formidable contender in Japan, shaping the competitive landscape long before Sega's console even entered the fray. The PC Engine, which debuted a full 12 months before the Mega Drive, gave NEC a significant head start in Japan's fiercely competitive gaming market. The timing was everything. By the time the Mega Drive launched, the PC Engine had already built a loyal audience, bolstered by its impressive library and innovative features. In fact, one could argue that the PC Engine was the true catalyst for the 16-bit wars, offering gamers a console with more power and flashier graphics than the aging Famicom, a full year before the Mega Drive hit store shelves. For many Japanese gamers seeking an upgrade, the PC Engine became the obvious choice, leaving Sega's system.
Dang, so I must be really missing out. You ever played PC Engine? I'm missing out, huh?
But to play catch-up from the very start. Despite technically featuring an 8-bit CPU, the PC Engine earned its 16-bit bragging rights through its advanced video color encoder and display controller, which allowed it to produce vibrant visuals with larger color palettes and bigger sprites. For gamers wanting a visually striking experience, the PC Engine was a game changer, bridging
Literally.
the gap between the Famicom and the emerging 16-bit era. Though it had its limitations, such as
Y'all saw Street Fighter 1. They're not convincing me with that one. Look, this Street Fighter 1.
the PC Engine
Hold up.
was a game changer, bridging the gap between the Famicom and the emerging 16-bit era. Though it
There we go. Street Fighter 1.
had its limitations, such as weaker handling of background layers compared to the Mega Drive, the graphical similarities between the two systems were close enough that many consumers saw no clear reason to pick Sega's machine over NEC's already established option. Basically, the PC Engine was already the Famicom alternative. Pricing added another layer of complexity to Sega's struggle. While the Mega Drive was reasonably priced, it was marketed as a premium product compared to the Famicom and PC Engine. This created the perception that it was more of a luxury item than an accessible console for the average Japanese household. Meanwhile, the PC Engine continued to thrive, securing its position as the second most popular console in Japan, behind Nintendo's juggernaut Famicom. While it floundered,
Was PC Engine a thing in the United States? I feel dumb for asking that, but like, was it a thing? That was never an argument on the playground. You know, Super Nintendo being better than PC Engine, or I never heard of PC Engine until I was an adult and started like getting into the retro scene.
under the name TurboGrafx 16 in the US,
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Okay. Yeah, still nobody I knew had that, but okay. Thank you. She answered my question.
PC Engine's domestic success presented a massive challenge for Sega, which, in that era, the company were never able to overcome. Adding another layer to the story, Sega enjoyed significant advantages in markets outside of Japan that it simply didn't have at home, and much of that, in part, is due to Sega of America's work with one particular publisher, EA.
It's in the
Reactions audiences might have towards these gaming giants today, it was this company that played a crucial role in catapulting the Mega Drive to success in Europe and the Americas. The lasting appeal of sports games, a phenomenon that still thrives today, has driven many to purchase consoles specifically for their favourite virtual sports experiences.
That was the cutest fight I've ever seen. Look at the cute fight.
Purchase consoles specifically for that still thrives
Hold on.
today, has driven many to purchase consoles specifically for their favourite virtual sports experiences. The Genesis was a system that many players specifically purchased to play sports games. With a solid lineup of sports titles, the Mega Drive became an attractive option for Western consumers eager to dive into classics like Madden, FIFA, and PGA Tour Golf. The wealth of sports titles contributed significantly to the console's widespread appeal, offering an enticing option for gamers who were into this sort of thing. However, while this strategy worked well in Western regions, it encountered cultural barriers when applied to the Japanese market. Looking back at this classic Japanese console war, it's clear to see why the PC Engine and Nintendo products had more appeal among Japanese audiences. The reasons go beyond just the advantage of chronological precedence. Despite its technological prowess, the Sega Mega Drive faced challenges due to the popularity of specific genres and art styles that didn't quite resonate with the Japanese market. It's no secret that gaming tastes differ wildly across the globe. Japanese kids couldn't get enough of JRPGs, obsessing over games packed with menus, stats, and complicated battle systems because nothing says fun like turning your hobby into an elaborate maths lesson. Meanwhile,
That could have said fun like menus.
children were busy slamming Mountain Dew and gravitating towards games that featured 3 key ingredients: sports, boogers, and rule breaking, whether it was scoring touchdowns in Madden, chucking snot in Boogerman, or living out their rebellious fantasies in games like Road Rash.
Chucking snot and booger man.
Chucking snot in Boogerman.
Okay, I've never heard of that game, and I am happy.
Or living out their rebellious fantasies in games like Road
Hey,
Rash.
Road Rash was
wasn't
sick.
exactly a hallmark of the US gaming scene. To put it as crudely as possible, maybe all of this was as simple as Western kids wanted sports and violence and enough attitude to make their parents roll their eyes, while Asian kids were happily grinding away in games full of numbers, menus, and enough repetitive tasks to make their maths homework look like a warm-up.
I feel like that was a little. I feel like that was a little racist. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't accusing her being a racist, but that was kind of a racist comment.
Chad's Sega Genesis may have stolen the Virgin Nintendo's lunch money in the West, but it seems that in Japan, the Chad Nintendo calmly sat at the top of the cafeteria eating a gourmet bento box while the Virgin Sega tripped over its own shoelaces. Holding a half-eaten rice ball, it dropped on the floor. Literally, what a loser. No matter how you feel about the platform's failings in Japan, one thing is clear. The Mega Drive's library brought a unique charm and attitude to gaming, with its key titles offering gameplay that feels wildly different from today's big-budget AAA releases. Times have moved on, but games inspired by this incredible era are still being created. And the best part is you can play them for next to nothing. Right now you can grab Streets of Rage 4 at 66% off, Sonic Mania for 77% off, or River City Girls.
All right, so what I took from that is that Sega had a horrible marketing strategy in Japan, as well as the odds were against them because of Nintendo pretty much having all of the developers on lock. Yeah. All right, y'all. So I'm going to go ahead and end this. Salutations to the nations. Peace.
Angel Knot.